So sometimes you get asked to work on a really cool project, but you only have a couple days to turn it around, and you have to quarantine in your tiny office because there is COVID out in your house, and you're also in the process of moving out of that tiny office. I guess what I'm trying to say is I think we should normalize working on the floor like some kind of electronics goblin. So join me down here. Okay, first, some backstory. I got hired to build an interactive prop that was to be displayed at the red carpet premiere of a rather popular television show. The company that hired me has a relationship with the show, and they were set to build out this very cool vintage 1980s pizza shop as a booth at the premiere. So my piece was an Easter egg. I took a real phone from the 80s and modified it so it would periodically ring throughout the event, and brave guests, if they felt compelled to pick it up, they would receive calls. And those calls were just pre-recorded clips, so we had some voicemails, some fake pizza orders, some clips from the show, all fun stuff. And the guests could press the buttons, and the phone acted like a real phone, except it wouldn't actually dial out. But everything about it was pretty period accurate. I am super happy with how it came out, and I'm very proud of being able to get it done so quickly. But unfortunately, due to some very last-minute vendor issues, literally the day of the event, the company was not able to get their booth up. And so I don't actually know who has seen or played with this phone, which is why I'm not going to be using the name of the television show as a selling point in this video. Other than some private emails, I don't really have any proof that I participated in this event in any way, so I don't want to be accused of clickbait. I'm not going to use the title of the show in the title of this video, but I'm really proud of what I did, and I worked hard, and so I figured I'd share it anyways. Yeah, it might be a little strange to share this project without the additional context, but I hope you can appreciate the thing for what it is. Enjoy. All right, I have torn everything apart and made my signature giant mess on the floor. And now I'm going to dive in with these two phones. I got them both on eBay. I always buy two just in case I break something or just need a replacement part, something doesn't work. And they, despite looking almost identical, are from different companies. Fortunately, both cases fit on both chassis, so that's going to be super handy. I'm actually going to be mixing and matching. I like the beige case better. It just looks a little more worn down, but it turns out the nice newer white phone is just a little easier to take apart and kind of hack into, so I will be using that as the internals. You can see I took the ringer out, which makes me a little bit sad. I was hoping to be able to use it, but these need a higher voltage to run properly, and I'm just a little worried I'm not going to be able to do that with batteries and have it kind of run safely all night. So I'm going to rip that out. I'm going to put a speaker in there instead, and that's going to break some hearts, but ultimately I just have to make sure this thing works and stays working for as long as possible. So I'll keep this around for some other project, but for now I'm going to replace it. And then, I thought I was going to have to use, I bought a bunch of these extra keypads for my T9 project, and I don't even think I'm going to have to use them because both of these phones have perfectly good keypads that are easy to kind of tap into. So wish me luck. I think this is going to go all right, but anything can go wrong at any time. So, and hopefully I won't have to stay on the floor the whole time. My legs are starting to hurt. All right, back at it. Day 2. As you can see, conditions continue to deteriorate, but fortunately the project is doing like 80% of what it needs to, which for something with a quick turnaround like this is pretty darn good at this point. So I do want to talk quickly about something that I think has gone right and something that I would advise you to do if you're ever in the same situation, which is to break your project up into as many discrete, testable components as possible. And at a bare minimum, which is what I've done here, you want to keep your hardware implementation separate as possible from your software. So what I did, mostly because I was traveling and I didn't even have any hardware, I wrote all the code, 90% of the code, to run on my computer, on my laptop, which means I could test all the logic, the application, so like people pressing buttons and playing audio, which is most of what this project does. I had that fully running on my computer, and I was just using my keyboard rather than, a phone keypad. So that way, when I get the hardware, I just drop that code on, and I just have to write the very specific pieces to this board. So the stuff that talks to the keypad, the stuff that talks to the little audio amplifier here, stuff that is only relevant to this board. So that means when I send this thing out, which I'm going to have to do very soon, I still have a version of the code that I can run locally here. And if I need to send any changes, I can literally just email them, and the new owner of this phone can load them in and, do whatever they need to. So yeah, keep things separate. I think this is probably one of the most compelling reasons to use CircuitPython, because it's just Python. That was something that I think Adafruit did explicitly, was just make it no different or have as few differences as possible from the Python that you would run on your computer. So the code is literally copied and pasted from my computer to the CircuitPython board. And if you don't know, another great thing about CircuitPython is that the way you get code on here is literally by plugging it into a computer, just with a normal USB cord, and dragging and dropping your code onto it. It shows up like a flash drive on your computer. So whenever you load a new file on, or you hit save on an existing file, the whole board will reboot and start running that code again. So that's awesome for situations like this where I might need to make changes remotely. I can literally just send those files over and the other person can load them on. And it's just quick too, even for local development, right when I'm working. It's very fast. All I'm doing is editing a file, hitting save, and the whole thing restarts instantly. So there were some things that didn't go quite as smoothly last night. I spent a lot of time dealing with audio issues. Some of them were my problem. Some of them were just problems inherent to the way I have this set up. So I'm going to talk about how the audio works a little bit. So there's 4 types of audio in this project, and they need to be played out of 2 different places. So 4 types of audio. One are the button tones. So when you press a button on a phone, it makes a very specific tone. The second type are, I'll call them status tones. So that's like a dial tone or a busy tone that you hear when you pick up the receiver. What else? The other type are the actual recordings that the guests will hear and, interact with in some way. And the last type is the ringer. So the first 3 types of audio play through the headset, the receiver, and the ringer plays out through a speaker. My original plan was to take advantage of the fact that these boards can play stereo audio files, so audio with a left channel and a right channel like you would route through headphones. But what I was going to do is take the left channel, route it to the headset, and the right channel, I would route it through an amplifier out to the ringer speaker. And then what I could do is just process any audio files that go on here and say any of them that I want to go through the headset, I would just pan all the way to one side, and any of them I want to go through the ringer, I would just pan all the way to the other side. The problem there is that you end up wasting a bunch of space, because if you're only using 1/2 of the audio file for actual audio data, that means the other side is just empty and taking up space. And I was hoping this wouldn't matter because, as you can maybe see from there, I'll try to zoom in later, this board has an SD card slot, and I was thinking I'll just put a big old SD card in there. Doesn't matter if the files are too big. There's no way I'm going to need more than 32 gigs of data. But it turns out the audio player code for CircuitPython doesn't play super well with an SD card. So it's hard to read multiple files from an SD card at the same time and also play them as audio. So maybe I'm doing something wrong, but it was getting real loud and nasty and sounded really bad. So the planned workaround at this moment is to skip the SD card entirely and to just use the available memory that's built into the chip, which is, it's only 16 megabytes. So if I keep my audio quality low, which I will because it's an old phone, it's not supposed to sound good, I can fit probably 5 to 10 minutes of audio, which I think for what this project is going to be, it's going to be just some quick phone calls. I think that's going to be plenty, but I'm waiting to hear back from my contact and confirm that that's going to be okay. Otherwise, I'm going to have to do a pretty hefty redesign, which I'm not looking forward to. So what do I have done? What do I have left to do? In the done column, the phone itself came apart like an absolute dream. It is built like it was made to come apart, and we'd love to see that. The only things left on this chassis are literally the pieces I need. So I have the keypad and the hangy-uppy majig, so the switch that closes when the phone's on the hook. And you can see I have plenty of space in there to fit my hardware, which is going to be great. And speaking of my hardware, this is what I have so far. It's, a bit of a mess right now. I'm still testing, but you can see I have the dev board here is a SparkFun Thing Plus RP2040, which I'm liking so far. I have a voltage regulator here to convert from the battery voltage, which I will eventually use, down to the 5 volts required by the rest of the stuff on here. I have an I2S audio, like a digital to analog converter, which might end up being overkill for how I'm running the audio in the long run here, but it's working fine so far. And then you can see I have an extra keypad here that I've been testing with. And the only thing missing right now, as far as I know, is the amplifier to power the Ringer speaker. And I think that's out for delivery today, hopefully. Oh, right. I do still have to hook up the receiver, which is just a matter of figuring out which wires in this little connector here I need to splice into to make noise out of the earpiece. That should be pretty straightforward. Nothing yet. Hopefully you can hear that. Okay, I think we're at the point where everything should work. We've got the final-ish assembly here, and I'm going to try it out. So I'm going to put the phone on the hook, just so we make sure it rings. And then I'm going to restart it over here. Okay, so it's ringing. That's good. I'm going to pick it up. We should hear a phone call. Okay, so the phone call I have loaded on here is very offensive. I don't know. It was the first recording I could find on the internet. I'm just going to let it play out. And all right, so the recording ended, and now there's just a dial tone, so we can hear that. So like a normal phone, you get a dial tone, and I'm going to hit the buttons here as if I'm dialing, but because this phone goes nowhere, it's just going to immediately play the kind of classic disconnected or busy state. I forget which one it is, but so the buttons work, but obviously it's not going to make a real call. And so normally if the phone is hung up and it's not ringing, and then I pick it up, it's going to be in that same state. It's going to be like ready to dial. But again, we can't tell. So that's all very good. And I have it configured right now to ring, I think it's every 2 minutes or so. So if I just leave this hung up, from the moment I hang up, after 2 minutes, it'll start ringing again. And yeah, that's the whole thing. So I'm going to close this thing up and give it a whirl on some batteries. Actually, real quick, before I close it up, I'll show you kind of what's going on inside. So if you look at the top of the phone up here, you can see I've got 8 AAA batteries. So that's 12 volts. I'm knocking it down to 5 volts for the normal operation. That's just the battery container I had sitting around. I figure 8 AAAs is going to be plenty of juice for this thing sitting around for a couple of hours. And then if you look in the middle in there, it's going to be hard to see. That's the speaker for the ringer, and it's just floating around in there. I don't really see a need to secure it. It's really light. It's not really moving anyways, so no extra parts. And then at the bottom is all of my hardware goodness underneath the keypad there. So we have the microcontroller dev board, we have an audio amplifier, we have a digital to analog converter for the audio, and I think that's it. Oh, and the voltage regulator. I'll make sure to put the schematic online somewhere. All right, that's it. I'm going to close it up.